Welcome everybody, this is Kyle, aka AlienTude, and today I've got a review of a Swords of Northshire custom katana. Let me briefly introduce myself before I get started. I'm a sword collecting enthusiast who is also a complete novice when it comes to using a sword. My collecting chops are much more focused on European swords than Japanese ones. Please keep this in mind during this review. You're listening to my amateurish opinions about one specific sword I own. So who is Swords of Northshire? They're a company that works with a forge or multiple forges in Longchuan, China. I'm sorry for butchering that pronunciation. They sell a variety of Japanese and Chinese reproduction swords, and while they have a large variety of stock items, they're most well known for their custom katanas. Let's take a look at that custom katana ordering process. You can choose from a variety of options, including blade length, steel type, hardening method, and more. The heart of the process is choosing the koshirai, the tsuba, fuchi, kashira, etc. When you go through the website, there's a decent selection of choices, but if you email them, they'll send you a catalog with even more choices and an Excel spreadsheet order form. This entire process is not what I would really call a custom katana. You're selecting from a list of pre-made stock items that Swords of Northshire purchases and assembles for you. There's a variety of companies who follow this basic business model, the most prominent of which are Jeiku Sinu Sword and Ryan Sword. With a true custom katana, you'd be able to have the koshirai made to your specifications, as well as get into the nitty-gritty details like amount of sori, spine thickness, and more. My wife bought this sword for me, along with a wakizashi for her. The katana costs $240 including shipping. We went through the catalog their representative, Bryce, provided via email and eschewed using the website, sending in the order form directly. From the time of order to when we received the daisho, it was about 3 months. Chinese New Year was during this time, so I'd imagine that delayed production some. Swords of Northshire has something of a mixed reputation online from what I've found. Some people swear by them, and others think you get barely functional blades with absolute junk koshirai. I don't have particularly high expectations for my katana since the price is pretty low. I've owned several budget katanas that I'll be comparing this sword to, most prominently my Huawei katana, which was a stock sword I bought for $268. I had originally planned to disassemble this katana to get a look at the nakago and see how well made the ska is, but unfortunately one of the makugi is directly under a knot in the ito, and the ito is tight enough that I don't think I'd be able to get it out and then back in properly. I'm going to go over the different parts of the katana, starting with the kashira. I went with a pretty simple one. Here's the picture from the catalog they sent, and I found a larger picture on the website. It's got a simple floral design, and the color is kind of a silvery black that's pretty attractive. The casting quality is better than I expected. There's a good amount of detail, and the lines are pretty crisp. The transition from the ito to the kashira could be better though. On one side there's a noticeable ledge that could cause some discomfort. The ito is advertised as silk. I'm not nearly familiar enough with the material to determine if it's actual silk or imitation. I can definitely say it feels different than the cotton ito on my Huawei, and based on the price, I'm guessing it's actually imitation. I selected a kata tamaki style of wrap, mostly because I wanted something different than the other katanas I've had. The quality of the wrap is, well, it's okay. Not as loose as some I've had, but certainly not as well done as my Huawei. The diamonds are roughly the same size, but not particularly even. The Manuki are quite loose in this wrap, although that might just be a side effect of a kata tamaki wrap. Speaking of the Manuki, here's the picture from the catalog. As you can see, these pictures are very small and low res, which was pretty annoying when trying to pick the koshirai. It was really difficult to tell what exactly I was choosing. These are a dragon-based Manuki, and I mostly picked them for the silver color, which is probably a cheap metal that is then nickel-plated. Like the kashira, the casting quality here is quite good. I can make out a lot of detail, which helps make these Manuki quite handsome. The samigawa is dyed black, and it's definitely real ray skin, as opposed to a cheap plastic or rubber mold. There's nothing really interesting about it though. The nodules are all roughly the same small size. The fuchi matches the design of the kashira, and is of a similar casting quality. I like the looks of it, and the transition from the ito is pretty much spot on. There's no ledges at all, which is a nice improvement over the kashira. Taking a look at the tsuba, I went with a fairly simple design, as I prefer less flash for my kosher eye. Here's the picture from the catalog. One thing that didn't really translate well from that picture to reality is how small the tsuba is. It looks to me like it's designed for a smaller sword, either a wakizashi or maybe even a tanto. I definitely would have picked a different one if I'd realized how small this one is. The casting quality on the tsuba is closer to what I expected to get when I ordered. It's fine, but not particularly detailed. There's some muddiness in places. It's not bad or anything, but it could definitely be crisper. The Habaki and sepa are silver in appearance, although I assume this is a cheap alloy metal, or even just brass, that is then nickel-plated. Here's the picture of the Habaki and sepa from the catalog. The sepas are a little different than the typical ones you find in most Longchuan katanas. The teeth are a touch larger. I like the silver look as opposed to the more common brass. The fit of the Habaki to the blade is not very good. You can see the mune, or spine, of the katana sticks out some from the edges, and on one side there's a noticeable gap between the Habaki and the blade. This isn't really unexpected on a budget katana, but I do find the poor fit to be disappointing. The saya features a glossy black lacquer with a decorative samigawa wrap near the koiguchi. The overall shape of the saya tapers both in width and thickness, which is a nice touch that isn't very common on budget katanas. The profile of the saya is a little more teardrop shaped than others I've held. Overall, I like the shape and appearance. The kodri and koiguchi both look like they might be made of a different material than the wood, so it could be horn, but I don't really know enough to tell the difference. The koiguchi is fairly well formed, and there isn't any gunk you sometimes see in budget sayas. The katana fits into the saya very nicely. There's very little rattle, almost unnoticeable, and the retention is what I'd consider perfect. The blade doesn't come out when held upside down and shaken, but it slides out easily with just a little pressure from the thumb. Alright, let's take a look at the business end, the blade. This is in the style of a shinogi zukuri shape, the most common shape of katana that pretty much everybody is familiar with. It's a through-hardened blade made of 1060 steel. Being through-hardened means the hamon is a fake, put on by wire brushing the blade to give it a different finish. I went with a Suguha style look for this fake hamon, thinking it would be the most attractive of the options. It doesn't look too bad, but I think I'd rather have no fake hamon at all. The wire brushing just doesn't quite do it for me. The other obvious embellishment on the blade is the laser-etched kanji. I don't speak or read any Japanese, so I can't verify what it says. My wife wanted our names on these blades, so that's what we requested on the order form. The name Kyle translated to Japanese kanji. I have no idea how that translates, or if it's just random characters, but there you go. The etching is there, and it looks decent enough. The bohi starts at least as far back as behind the habaki. It should start in the nakago, but obviously I can't verify that, and it travels to just before the kasaki, where it terminates pretty cleanly. The lines are generally quite straight and clean. The yokote, like the hamon, is fake. There's no geometric change to the shape of the blade, it's just a slightly different polish. This isn't surprising at this price point. The very tip of the kasaki is a little roughly shaped, at least compared to my Huawei. Again, I'm not particularly surprised about this. The beautifully done tip on my Huawei is the uncommon feature on a budget katana. The overall profile of the blade is graceful and slimmer than I expected. When ordering, Swords of Northshire offers unsharpened, razor sharp for light cutting, or sharp with niku for heavy cutting. I'm a firm believer in having some meat behind the edge for a sword to help with durability, and I don't think they need to be incredibly sharp to do their job, so I went with sharp with niku. The edge is definitely sharp, and there does seem to be some niku here. It's not as sharp as the Huawei katana, it's more on par with the Ryujins I've had, and definitely sharper than the Yomikuni budget katana I owned. Let's take a look at some cutting footage to see how it performed in my amateur hands. Always keeping in mind that I'm a novice when it comes to cutting, this sword performed pretty well. It's pretty light and agile, and feels good in the hands. I had several failed cuts on pull noodles, as well as some tearing instead of clean cuts, but I mostly attribute that to my poor technique. With water bottles, the katana cut admirably, slicing through with very little resistance. I was able to get one clean cut on a milk jug, but my phone barfed while recording that, so I don't have any of that footage. I also tried a coffee creamer bottle, which has considerably thicker plastic. I didn't manage to cut all the way through that. There was a lot of resistance in that cut. So now it's time to talk bottom line. Was the sword worth the price of $240 US? I think that depends on what you're going for. If you want to select from a pretty large selection of koshirai and options, then the price is not bad at all. You're definitely getting a functional sword that looks nice and works well. The placement of the Makugi under an Ito knot is kind of troubling for me though. I really wanted to see what the Nakago and especially the Ska looked like. That's one of the places budget katanas end up cutting costs, and if the Ska is split or poorly made, the sword's long-term use could be negatively affected. Now let's keep in mind this is a budget katana. Are there better options at this price point? I think the answer to that is yes. Huawei, who has an excellent reputation, has several models available for $200 and my Unakubi Zakuri, which is my favorite katana I've used, was $268. Since the customizations offered by Swords of Northshire isn't really important to me, I'd rather get the additional level of fit and finish Huawei offers. That being said, Swords of Northshire did exceed my expectations here. I didn't have particularly high hopes for this katana, and I'm pleasantly surprised with what I received. I think the koshirai are of a pretty good quality, the Ito wrap is tighter than I expected, and overall, it's a good enough sword for the price. Okay, I think it's about time to wrap this review up. Thank you so much for watching. If you happen to enjoy the video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to see more reviews, consider subscribing to my channel. Until next time, Alien Toot out.